These are really senior people and I don't want them to fill out a crossword. And my response was I'm just presenting information a different way. The education aspect of it is still there, but it's the presentation of it. And you're thinking about the delivery of what you're getting somebody to do or somebody asked to do.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How is everybody doing? This is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. My name is Joseph. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time, have a seat, relax. And for those of you who are back, couldn't thank you enough for your continued attention to our program. So thank you to everybody. Big thanks all around. All right. I am here today with Jacqueline Stockwell. Jacqueline is the CEO and founder of Leadership Through Data. Jacqueline, before I get to question one, I had to do question zero. Question negative one is, how are you doing today? How are you feeling? What time is it right now? I picked up from your accent that you're not in a different part of the world, but I'm not clear on where.
Oh, yeah, no, cool. Well, I'm really excited today to be with you. I'm in the UK, so it's 3:05 in the afternoon. And I'm from lovely Essex, and all it's doing is raining for the last couple of weeks. We haven't had any sunny sunshine, so.
Okay, fantastic. I've shared this on the program before, so I gotta get out of the habit of sharing it every time I speak to somebody from the UK. But my girlfriend is half English, half Taiwanese, and so every now and then her accent comes out when I try to get it out of her. But I used to do sales, and a lot of our clientele were in the UK. And we had to rely on FedEx to ship expensive watches to people's houses. And that was a bad idea because people would call and you didn't tell me the watch was delivered. I live in London. It rained.
Yeah, you'll have to tease me on my accent because I might talk too quick. So I'll try my best to keep pace.
Oh, you'll tease me when I give the accent a go too, because it's tempting. It's a lovely accent. So, all right. First thing that stuck out to me when I was looking into Leadership Through Data is that it's a family-run business. It's always lovely to hear that. Would you mind kicking things off by telling us about the development of the company and how you founded it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my career in the National Health Service in the UK. So I worked my way from being a clinical clerk in the eye clinic all the way up through to a complaints manager within a hospital. And then I moved into information governance role in a mental health trust. And during my time in the NHS, data protection or information governance was a really difficult task to get people to engage with within the organisation. I mean, for me, I love information governance. So it's about looking after people's information within the organisation. And it's like a real nice structured framework. I just couldn't get people engaged with it. And I attended lots of different training courses to upskill myself because I'd moved from different roles. And each time I went to a course, probably about 9:30, I was really itching for the coffee break because it was just information overload. It was like this sort of, I'm going to chuck everything at you. There's going to be slide after slide with bullet point after bullet point after bullet point. And you just get completely confused where you're trying to learn. So you're trying to read the slides or you're trying to listen to the trainer. And I'd walk away from them feeling overwhelmed, an empty box, and thinking about what do I do now? And it's like, how do I apply this in my job? So within the role that I did some sort of deep dive workshops, made them fun, engaging, face-to-face training, and I got some good sign up. And then I had my daughter, and then kind of wanted a different kind of path for myself. And one of my colleagues in the NHS said, "Oh, why don't you set up a training company?" And I thought, oh, what a fantastic idea. So I thought I'll give it a go. I'd been to university and did a business management degree, but whilst theory is great, practical is something completely different. So I never run a business before. I went out and, felt the fear and did it anyway, and kind of balanced my approach on, well, what's the worst that could happen, really? And for me, the worst thing that could happen is that I'd have to go back to an employed job. But the best thing that could have happened is kind of what's happened to me over the last sort of 6 years. Yeah. Is that, I believe that's asked the question, or I've talked too much.
Oh, there's no such thing as talking too much on a podcast. The last thing that I want is for people to be like, all right, I'll make this short and sweet. I'm like, God, no, please.
Oh,
so
cool.
I gleaned a few things from it, and one thing that we're going to foreshadow is the idea of feeling the fear. We are going to talk about that a little later on in the program. But the role that sticks out to me that I'd love to hear a little bit more about your experience was a complaints manager. Now, as I mentioned, I did customer service, and I had to deal with some pretty high level complaints because people were spending thousands of dollars on some of this stuff, and so the $1,000 complaints were definitely a lot more empathetic than the $10 complaints or the $50 complaints. So what I would like to hear is just like, what was your ability to make change in the complaints manager department, and what was the experience like for you there?
It's a really interesting question because part of who I am, I'm very positive, and I sit within a growth mindset. So I'm always wanting to learn from things. So I still had that mindset within as a complaints manager, and I managed a great team, and we'd have people that sort of like missed appointments in the NHS to, really severe ones, that bereavement or something within the hospital. And I always tried to find that piece of learning. So as difficult the experience has been for that person, it takes real courage and empowerment for somebody to, even raise a complaint, because that in itself, it can be quite stressful, because you could weigh up the mindset of, actually, is there any point in me complaining because nothing's going to change? So I'd set the mindset that actually, for kind of the complaints that we had, what lessons could be learned and what services could be improved as an outcome for it. So, yeah, I did probably 4 years of my time in the NHS, moving a commissioning group, working with hospitals, and then moved into sort of line management within hospital. So they're really different experiences for me, but very rewarding as well. And, traumatic at times.
Oh, I can. Well, I can imagine. There's limits to how much of that I feel is ideal for me to imagine while still being able to focus on the conversation. Because my mom works in the hospital. She's not. She's just a phone operator. So sometimes you hear the panic in people's voices, like, I can't find somebody, and then other times you do. When I hear hospitals, I always think, we imagine the worst, but it's not necessarily true. Sometimes it's also the best part of life, because new life is being created there, and there's a lot to be excited about. So there's a mix of, I think, of tones that hospitals are known for. I'll tell you a quick story because I think it's funny. This is always the funniest interaction my mom told me, where a lot of Italians call, and I'm Italian, so I'm allowed to make fun of us. An elderly man calls my mom and says, "Where's the Gugats?" Mom says, "That sounds like a nickname. You need to give us his actual name." And he says, aspetta. Rosita, che cosa fa nome della Gugats? And that to me is I was just cracked up with that. Just imagine that's their life. That's how they talk to each other all the time. So there's definitely a mix of experiences there that I've only picked up through osmosis. But with all of that, there was one other question that I wanted to ask about it, because I find it personally fascinating. And one of the themes that we've picked up on throughout this show is the idea of, we observe something in context, whether that's a person's issue or they're trying to correct something or they're trying to prepare for something, but then we notice that there's subtext, there's subconscious issues. So did you happen to identify patterns in that, where someone would call in and there would be a complaint and you go, okay, this is what the person is saying, but this is what's really going on, and this is where we're trying to figure out what the real solution is? Do you have any experience along those lines?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just complaint handling. And I do that kind of in my job role now, or in my coaching roles with people. I call it, it's like unconscious behaviors. So it's actually, somebody's presenting something, but that isn't the issue. And, a good coach is somebody that can stop and kind of listen, and actually, how are you feeling, and kind of really open up the kind of the wounds. Um, yeah, absolutely. On various occasions, the NHS is fantastic for what it does. I strongly believe it's what it does. Some could be the patient's expectations of the service and the delivery of the service. Some could be, capacity issues, and there are a whole wide range of things. And for me, it wasn't about a blame culture. It was about actually, do we need to learn to improve a service? Do we need to sort of like manage the patient's expectations, or and how we can kind of work together? And you can definitely see those behaviours, and it's how you manage those, and that is essentially, you can do a lot of complaint management handling training for handling those difficult conversations, and that's definitely something that I've taken on, in my role now. But it's also understanding people, because everybody is different, everybody is unique, everybody presents themselves, I say, differently, and that's where you get connections with people. It's kind of an understanding of that person and how they operate or how they communicate. Body language is kind of a massive thing as well, forms all part of that communication.
And then one last observation that I'd share is, sometimes when people are at their lowest point, when they're expressing a grievance. Now, this does come from my experience in sales and e-commerce and marketing. Some of the most difficult cases to work with can end up being some of the best advocates. So for every dip, there is an equal rise. And so a lot of these people, they go from being irate to being grateful, and suddenly their whole life changes, and now they have become someone who really wants to support the cause. So that's just one thing that I picked up on as well, that I think is really fascinating about seeing these issues and remembering that these aren't just opportunities, but they're golden opportunities to really make the impactful change that you don't get from people who are just, complimenting, right? Complimenting reinforces. It says, yeah, you're doing right, you're doing good, here you go. But you do need the negative feedback in order to build better.
You do, but in that line of work where I was, it would have been nicer if you'd had more compliments of the service, because the compliments letters are very kind of minimal to the kind of complaint letters. And then if you work on the percentage of good experiences versus bad experiences, it could kind of average out. But it's really interesting you said that, Joseph, because one of my best friends is very much, when we talk about information management, we try and have information champions. So within organization, anybody that kind of manages information or is part of that service, and you're rolling it out, you're cascading it out to the organization, it's always good to have an information champion. And the best information champions are the ones that haven't been engaged at the start, that you've turned around, that they become the best kind of advocate. So I really do relate to that.
So before we jump more into how, I'm going to say LTD, by the way, operates, I just want to make sure that everyone is clear on like what the data is as in leadership through data. So what exactly is the data that we are in talks with? And then, because you mentioned information management, so it's not all data, there is also an information side of this too, and I imagine there's a distinction between those 2 points.
Yeah, so when I first set up the company, I wanted a short abbreviation, and you've politely put it LTD, but in the UK we're all limited companies, so I kind of wanted to work something. So my strong belief is there is a huge difference between leaders and managers. Leaders are to inspire, managers manage processes, and you can't have an organization without both of those two functions. And my whole inspiration behind it was that with good, strong leadership and quality data, you can have an excellent company, because you can make good decisions based on good data. Now, when we talk about data specifically, so we've got in the UK, we've got the Data Protection Act, we've got lots of legal requirements that we have to adhere to. And certainly the clients that we work for or work with, there's a wide range of things they have to adhere to, so Freedom of Information Act. So we call that sort of under the information umbrella. So you've got records management, general data protection, information governance, and then sort of like all the other topics that we follow that we can offer as training. And then you've got sort of data protection, privacy. I cover it as a broad as information management, which covers all the criterias. So that's kind of how I got, sorry. Mm-hmm. So that's how I kind of got through sort of creating the organization, because everybody has data or information within their organizations, and they're sort of legally obligated to look after it from an organizational perspective and manage it. And a lot of the work that Leadership Through Data do is we train organizations how to the findability aspects of it. So how you can find that information readily, how you can secure it, and how you can make sure that everybody is operating lawfully within the organization.
Mm-hmm. So the first thing that stuck out to me is the difference between leaders and managers. And just to relate it to my own experience working in background for film and television, is that what a lot of people might not realize, if someone has never stepped foot on a set before, is that we all know that TV shows and films have directors, and directors are the leaders in this case, because the directors have the vision for the material, which I would argue is the information, the writing and the script, as well as the storyboarding and knowing what the actors are capable of. That's all the information that director is working with and leading with. So the part that people might not know is that there are also assistant directors, who I would argue are the managers in this analogy, because the assistant directors are doing all the things the director doesn't have the time to do, but are still making sure that the vision cascades correctly right down to us, the living props. So an assistant director are the people that we background typically work with. They're the ones that say, okay, you're all sitting here, and on action, you all need to get up and scream, and please just don't give me a hard time. That's the role of the assistant director. So I think there's an interesting correlation there between the idea that there's people who have to maintain the vision and are keeping things running smoothly, but they have to have a clear understanding of what is the vision, what is the role that the leader has to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And certainly because, as you said earlier, we're a family-run business. So I run the business with my other half. And I'm very much sit on the sort of leadership, inspiring, visionary encouragement. And then she's very much on the delivery, but still maintaining that leadership. So we call ourselves yin and yang because we work so sort of kind of well together. But absolutely, it is, and you can kind of cascade it down.
The usage of, and if I get the term wrong, by the way, I can count on you to correct me, but the usage of of data and information and facts became evident pretty quickly from my research, because I was looking at the training methods on your website, and it outlines participatory learning is the way that information is conveyed, and using imagery as a vital aid. And you mentioned this earlier about how you were trying to absorb this information, and you felt like you might as well have just been splashed with a bucket of water for all the absorption that was going on. So this is one of those questions that I realize is already like partially answered, but in the context of running Leadership Through Data, running LTD, what was the reasoning for using this method?
Yeah, so simply I'm dyslexic, so I learn very differently.
Okay, understandable.
I wanted, setting up a training company, I wanted to have a different product on the market. That in itself is exciting, to have a different product on the market, but also imposter syndrome, confidence about pushing yourself out on opening a business up onto a market that everything was very, this is always how we've trained, or how we've kind of delivered information management. I did a lot of research into how people learn and kind of learning styles. And it goes back to my point that everybody is different. Everybody learns differently. So I'm very sort of visual learner. I'm very sort of discussion based with people. I can't sit on my own and read notes and absorb that information, where other people can. And you've got very analytical people as well, where you've got, hands-on. You actually learn more from hands-on training or group discussions. And for me, I kind of wanted to make sure that we had a blended approach on how we train, so we could provide an inclusive training environment. But also I wanted to have the big thing that when you go on a training course, you actually have takeaways to go and say, well, I know what I need to do now. So in us getting people involved in discussions or actively doing case scenarios or working through things within the training course, you're actually getting people talking and sharing. And whilst you're doing that, people are absorbing more and more information. So that's helping with memory retention. And then we have visual slides. And when I say visuals, you can use pictures. You just need to make sure you've got a correct copyright. But you can also use like graphics or diagrams. It doesn't have to be essentially a full-on sort of photo, because if you present that picture and the trainer's kind of talking to you, you'll be more focused on the trainer than you will be with the picture, but the picture will help with that memory retention later on. And then we provide workbooks so they can work through the activities, but it's a prompt for later on for the other learners that might want to do some solitary learning or some additional reading afterwards. So we've got those. And then I always found in very much my community that because data protection is so super serious and information is serious, and absolutely is, but actually getting that across, carrot and stick isn't working now. So you can turn them into, you could play a game to get your message across. You can get people's level of understanding a bit better than dry, boring, this is the article, this is the recital. And yes, you do need to know that, but actually from a practical aspect, as you talk about end users or the people at the bottom, they need to know how to look after that information within their job. And that's for the information manager or the data protection officer to know those particular lawful articles.
Mm-hmm. There's something that never stuck out to me before until having this discussion with you, because I have heard of the concept of different learners, different methods of learning, and by extension, different levels, different forms of intelligence. But what never occurred to me is that means that you also have to have different kinds of teachers. There's different ways that people are able to convey information. And I'm throwing this out just into the ether just to see if it sticks. As a rule, I never formally expect people to be the arbiters of the answer to the questions. Just like, hey, let's see what you can share on it. So would there be a one-to-one parallel between how somebody might be a learner versus how somebody might be a teacher? So for instance, if we have visual learners, that means we have to have visual teachers. If we have musical learners, we have to have musical teachers. Or is there a subset of specific ways to teach and then specific ways to learn that don't cross over from one to the other?
I think it goes for me. So I've got a 6-year-old daughter. She's in primary school. She moved from one school to the other. Well, the first school, she didn't like her teacher. They were kind of, highly disciplined. This is what you do. This is this is the curricula. We need to work through this. She's kind of moved schools, and they've got a completely different approach to education and kind of learning, and they're still meeting the exact criteria, but they're doing it in a more playful, creative kind of delivery of it. And I think teaching is very challenging, but highly rewarding. But training is exactly the same thing. So you'll always have, and certainly from my experience, you'll always have people that get on really well with certain trainers, but might not like someone else's style. So I think we have about 52 associates worldwide that cover all of our training materials. And when we onboard them, we put them through, this is our expectations of how we want you to train. It's participatory or discussion-based learning. There's course material that we've kind of offered. And we get them to kind of train the trainer for them to deliver another course. They come and see the course already being delivered. I think very much for me, I think for training, you can train somebody to be a trainer, but you have to kind of want to be a trainer, if that makes sense. You have to have the passion, enthusiasm, because when you're training or teaching, it's putting your all in. So I teach people about public speaking, and I say that there's 3 P's in public speaking. So there's preparation, practice, and performance. And it's a performance. Training, teaching is a performance. If you just kind of stand there and go, oh yeah, hi Joseph, I'm here today, talking on about a podcast, we're probably not going to get many people to continue to listen. But you and I are both sort of interacting. We're both sort of good body language gestures, and we're kind of bringing our role for this discussion. And I think that's exactly the same in teaching. And right at the start, we talked about how you can view somebody's interactions with you when we were talking about the complaint management. And it's the same thing. It's the human person. It's how you present yourself, and it's how we understand people. And it's having that sort of knowledge and kind of working the room, as we say, or virtual environment.
I don't know if I've ever actually been able to like properly read the room. I have a very high tolerance for awkwardness. So like a lot of my other friends, we might be in a situation, everybody starts to feel uncomfortable, and I'm the only one still relaxed. I don't know if that's a talent or a lack of talent, but there are definitely certain areas that I just like my brain just does not click in this. So a thought popped into my head. And I'd love to get your take on this, whether you think this has any validity or if I'm sort of off base with it. But I've had this longstanding theory that because our family and growing up in a family setting is the single strongest imprint that we can have, our imprint to our parents, to our siblings, and to our relatives if we happen to see them. So that imprint, I think, is very natural for humans to then... Okay, I was trying to pick another word, whatever, imprint onto other people. So when we're in a class and we see an adult there, if it's a male, we start to imprint sort of the fatherly relationship to them. And if it's a female, we might imprint the motherly relationship to them. But then there might be offsets of that. If someone's a bit on the younger side of a teacher, they might be more like the older brother or older sister. They might have like an uncle feeling to them. So I think that is... part of how people can resonate with one another is not just seeing them as they are, but noticing that there's sort of an unconscious relationship to them, and that might build trust. So I'd love to get your take on that. Do you feel like that there's a validity to the idea that we tend to see family members in other people?
Yes, very much so. I mean, in my professional career, I did the same thing. So it was kind of motherly figures of, I was young into my career. And I can see other traits within my family members and kind of, associates that kind of work with. I can definitely see that. I think for me, from my own personal experience, very much, in the last sort of 6 years when I've had the business, is learning to empower myself and believe in myself a lot more, and kind of making those more grounded decisions for myself rather than kind of reaching out to other people and asking for advice and decisions, which is what I used to do. So yes, I do kind of, I can see that of what you're saying. But then I also think that there's that, as a person, you don't want to be putting that on somebody else if that's not kind of welcomed. Does that make sense? So you don't want to be sort of saying that you're a motherly figure or a sisterly figure if you're not getting that sort of interaction back from that person.
I mean, if you're not getting an interaction back, then that might be why the imprint is there in the first place. Like, yeah, you've been very emotionally distant and vacant. You're just like my sister. Like I can. The baseline for me is really a matter of my argument is that it can't be helped, because what imprints on us so early on is so profound that it just sort of comes up, and I think it's. I've talked to, and I'm getting way off topic here, but I've talked to friends who've they try to ask a girl out, they try to date, and they really love this girl, and she doesn't love him back. So I'm like, look, you have this love. You can either try to just eliminate it, gut it out of your system, which will happen over time because you two are not connecting, or try to convert that affection to something that might be a little bit more productive. Maybe don't love her anymore as a potential intimate partner, maybe try to love her as a sister, try to love her as a cousin, love her. So that to me, I think is okay, I don't think that's a destination, but I definitely think that's a way to start moving into a different way rather than flip a switch and go, oh no, all those feelings I had are just completely gone. I think that there's a more of a healthy transition that way, but I am
Yeah.
also not an expert on any of this. I'm just a guy
No,
who
me
listens to a lot
either.
of people. Yeah. So I did have a follow up to the participatory learning question. So you said it's been 60 years so far. I'd love to hear about maybe some of the teaching methods that were used early on, or what were some of the corrections, adjustments, improvements that you had to make over time?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So the business now, so we operate we're registered in three different countries. So the US, Australia, and the UK. But we also deliver training to Canada and New Zealand. So it's essentially five organisations. When I first started, as I said to you, I was from a public sector kind of role. I'd created I've got these pictures, and I was selling my Caldecott Guardian course, which is kind of a conscious of an organisation within the NHS. So somebody can go to and kind of they can make a decision based on a patient. And these are and we have senior information risk owners. So these are kind of senior people within the kind of NHS, and I'm selling this kind of. My view at the time was this out of the box, so super different to anything else. I mean, the pictures, the workbooks. So we used to have printed workbooks. And I'm, female and I like nice things. So we had ring binder, we had delegate sleeves, pens, and these workbooks. I had them on shiny copy paper. So when we first got the first set of delegates that turned up, the feedback was really difficult to write on this paper, and it was kind of like I just hadn't thought about something like that. I was like, oh wow, they look so cool and so kind of glossy. So we then kind of made changes to the sort of the whole workbook, but the two front pages stayed shiny and glossy, and the rest were sort of paper. And then I was doing things like playing games. So we had like crosswords, or we had like word searches. So fill in the blanks. It's just, I did have some challenges when it first came out to say that these are really senior people, and I don't want them to fill out a crossword. And my response was I'm just presenting information a different way. The education aspect of it is still there, but it's the presentation of it. And you're thinking about the delivery of what you're getting somebody to do or somebody asked to do. And I know, certainly myself and my other half, we like kind of doing crosswords or reading a paper on the train. So it was kind of this sort of approach that it could be an activity within the course or outside the course. And then lots were around, I think I made up case scenarios from my previous NHS role about, somebody wants access to some information within the NHS, and how would you, under a subject access request, how would this happen, or how would you start it? And you kind of work methodically through what you need to do within the workplace. So that was our kind of core information management training. And in 2019, just before COVID, we created a records management Microsoft 365 course, because a lot of people kind of using Microsoft 365 but not knowing the applications or the capabilities of it. So we created this course for information managers by information managers, solely designed for. And that was kind of the course that took us to Australia. But in there, we're playing Cluedo. In America, it's called Clue, but it's called Cluedo. And we hide clues inside SharePoint. Do you know Microsoft at all,
Do I know Microsoft
Joseph?
at all? Well,
Yeah.
yes, I do. I mean, I've used Microsoft Word, I've used Excel, but I'm an open office user now. So, but I know open office, it has variations of all of them. So, I mean, I don't know if I just like rate my knowledge of Microsoft at 1 out of 10. I don't know. I guess like a 4.5 or a 5. I feel like I get some basics of it, but I definitely have not explored the depths to which Microsoft is capable of.
Yeah. I mean, from a fundamental, like a real Bobby basic kind of level, and how I'd like to explain it is that you have a Word document, you create a file, you save it, and then you might put it in another file, and then kind of another file, and then you kind of it then shows a file structure, and then it's how you can then search and find, or you can use SharePoint, and then from SharePoint, there's loads of. I'm not going to get all technical into it, but it's kind of you're looking at from an organization managing information. It's having an information architecture. So when you design a building, you need to have a set of plans. So that's fundamentally when you kind of roll out Microsoft 365, or you're looking to use it with Microsoft Teams or SharePoint. Build your architecture kind of first, and that's pretty much what we help people do. So room by room, we create, help them create, manage, find, and secure the information. And then there's kind of like multiple other courses around records management and information protection, which is kind of why we were talking about the information management umbrella. I think I've gone off at a tangent.
Which this is pro. Well, I'm pro tangent. I'm pro tangent.
Okay.
I'm pro. If people want to start ranting, because it's all about thinking out loud. It's about giving people a chance to come across a realization that I don't think is possible if I expected people to be highly scripted or highly like whatever, highly scripted with their answers. So I'm all about it. I'm just gonna tell you this just because like I don't even know why I do this, but I had a couple of email addresses that I had subscribed to on GoDaddy. They were Outlook addresses. They've been synced to my Outlook page, but then I canceled them about 6 months ago. And every day, without fail, Microsoft Outlook sends me 3 automated emails saying that these email addresses haven't synced. And every day for the last 6 months, I just delete those emails. I know I could fix it. I know I can do it, but I have just found something so satisfying about seeing those emails every day, knowing that they're never going to change anything on their end. Oh, they're out of sync, are they? Oh, I should really change that. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
And email management, that's even a thing for like records. What are you holding for records for organizations? What do you define as a record? So they're kind of all the great stuff that we do to help organizations.
I would say that I find that emailing has, and here's me going on a tangent, but I find emailing has not been fully utilized in present day. And what I mean by that is I'm subscribing to newsletters. I get offers from companies or accounts that I've signed up for. And then of course I'm just antagonizing Outlook for some reason. So I'm getting a lot of emails, but I'm not reading a heck of a lot just because of it's not really enjoyable to either look at it on my phone. It's usually not formatted in a way that's enjoyable to read. And so I kept thinking, like, if there was an app that converted our email into more like articles, so it was almost like a magazine subscription rather than reading emails, I feel like that would actually improve retention a lot. And it just speaks to what we're talking about today, which is being able to convey the information that is more conducive to learning goes a long way to be able to absorb, retain, and utilize that information. So that's just my hot take for the day.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I was talking to our marketing manager, who is my cousin. So we talked about family business the other day, and we used to have something called the LTD Telegraph, which used to be a newsletter, but I didn't want to call it newsletter. I thought the Telegraph kind of quirky, something different. I didn't want it to look like, the plain text kind of, exactly what you're talking about, the same thing that gets into everyone else's kind of email box. So we've called it snapshots, LTD snapshots now. So it's like a snapshot of the month, kind of what we've been doing. But I would definitely say, Joseph, for you, unsubscribe to things, and because you've got some. Make sure you unsubscribe to the emails that you don't want, and if you don't want to sign on to it, don't consent to it.
I agree completely. I did a purge about a year and a half ago when I was putting most of my attention into searching for work and searching for jobs. So at that time, my patience was very thin. And so if I got an email that wasn't a job offer, I'm like, you're out, you're out, you're out. I only need to see. So it was a matter of like time and place that motivated me to purge. But yeah, I'm definitely due for another purge. So one thing that I wanted to follow up on, and well, actually, this is frankly a whole new question, but it talks about so much of what we discussed so far. So this is one of the quotes from the website. So excellent trainer, making a dry subject enjoyable, tailoring the course around the needs of our business, very informative, came away feeling a lot more knowledgeable. And it illustrates so the point of the question is, I don't know how much of it is a byproduct or how much of it is truly like a conscious effort of the interactive visual-based teaching. So how much are you consciously planning the fun side of it?
Yeah, so it's a 50-50 really.
Okay.
So 50% is on the course material, but then 50% is on the trainer that's delivering. We've talked about kind of the 3 Ps: practice, prepare, practice, and performance. And they've got to bring it their all to perform. A lot of our trainers will they'll talk about their real life kind of work examples that are relatable. They'll engage discussions, and they will tailor the courses to that particular person. I mean, we do external courses, but we do in-house courses as well. So they're tailor-made for the organizations. So customers can have both those options. But yeah, I mean, I run the public coaching, the communications and presentations, and I get people standing up, circling arms. We do sit-stand movements all the time. We play videos, so we kind of really sort of try and mix it up really.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's some statistics around the attention span of somebody. I think it's around 6 seconds. So moving from a static slide to something that's could be movable, or taking the slides down and just having a discussion point, using breakout rooms to make the rooms smaller. I mean, we very much focus on having small group discussions because that also helps with learning capacity as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely say the trainers go through interviews for us. As I've said before, we say this is kind of the expectation. This is what we want to kind of see from you. We encourage them to come on kind of my courses to help share their stories, but also it is around a 50-50 mix.
You reminded me of something that I had seen not too long ago. It was a test where, and you can see 2 different students, they were like in elementary school, and one was watching Star Wars and the other one was watching like a math presentation. And it was an experiment on being able to retain attention. And the kid who was watching Star Wars was having a time of his life. He couldn't peel his eyes away from the screen. Although I remember being like 8 years old, trying to watch the original Star Wars movie and being kind of bored by the time C-3PO lands in the desert. So I think there was even some maturity on my side before Star Wars could retain my attention. But then the kid who had to watch the math video was just not engaged whatsoever, spinning around in his chair, waiting for it to go. So it just goes to show how important it is for information to be conveyed in a lively and interactive manner. Like it's really important. It's
really important, and it's the delivery of it. And if I can remember the book title, but I read a really interesting book around maths, and how they basically changed the way people learn about maths through visuals, activities, and kind of exercises, really. But it is around the delivery. And most of the community and most of the work that I do sort of in my coaching capacity now is that as information managers or data protection officers, we have so many important and valuable things that we need to be saying to the organisation, to be looking after the information. That world tendency that they'll pull together a lot of slides, loads of information, think, great, job done. Night before, it won't be practiced, and then it could be, poorly delivered. And within, 6 seconds that I say an attention span is, somebody could turn off straight away. So how do you get people engaged? How do you get people excited about data protection and information management? Mm-hmm. And it is just around how you deliver it. You bring your all. So yeah, I do agree. And I think that stands. I mean, there's so many TED Talks around, presentations, no death by a PowerPoint, and it's around your delivery of what you're saying. Don't stick monotone.
Have you ever had a situation where your hand was forced, and whether it was the subject matter or was just the nature of the company, that you couldn't really use some of these methods, and you were sort of stuck trying to do things in a more sterile presentation? Like, did you ever have to deal with a situation like that?
There's one occasion where a customer came to me and said, we need to train 100 people, and I want 50 people in each kind of classroom. And I just said no, because that's not the USP. And I don't just want to, a lot of people can see training as a tick box exercise, right? You need to do your information governance training or your manual handling and your health and safety. It could just be a tick box. But actually, for me, training isn't about a tick box. It's about how people learn, because through learning, so you're investing in training to that person, but you're also investing that time, the organization. So there's going to be growth from the person and the organization. So it shouldn't just be a tick box exercise. And I had said to the customer, I'm not training 50 people. So we'll do 20 people in a classroom. We'll just about push to 15 online if they're from the same organization and they know each other, because online training is more and more challenging because you've got lots more people, and certainly with the interactivities. We started to do some short workshops, which has had a slight impact on some of the games or the amount of content you want to get through, but the way around it is we're going for like case scenarios. So if a customer wants a certain topic covered, we'll create a scenario that you can really tease out all the learning points, but you can still get everybody kind of talking together. So we're sort of adapting some of the teaching methods to achieve the outcome for the business, but also to not go back on our USP. So and it can also go into online learning as well. So I think online learning training has a bad reputation for that tick box, because you can go on and click straight to the end, can't you? Do the assessment and you've kind of done those. But there's some really good online learning platforms, and we're starting to use ours now as well, that can be engaging. They can be it's a 5-2-2 approach. So 5 minutes of content, 2 minutes of break of them learning that content, and 2 minutes of coming back and kind of retelling the group about the learning point that they've just made. So you can get some good online learning platforms as well. So hopefully that answers the questions. So it's an adaptability, really.
Yeah. And along those same lines, there are going to be some, I would anticipate, some pretty big changes in the online space, because I do have a lot of contacts, and I have spent some time in the metaverse area with the Web3 podcast. That oh man, I cannot wait until we can get back and doing that. But the metaverse and Web3 and crypto, all that is very much like bear market, bull market. But the idea of the metaverse and a virtual reality has come up a lot in those conversations, because it's the nature of work is changing. The idea that a company can actually have a lifespan of about 7 days because there's an objective, the objective is complete, and everybody just wraps up and goes home, or it was already home, as it were. So this is just a speculative question, but have you had an eye on anything that's going on in the virtual reality space and how that might be an exciting opportunity down the line?
Yes, definitely down the line. We're kind of minimal into it, but yes, I mean, if we talk about the virtuality space, and we have avatars on our website, so we're kind of sort of like semi-creating it there, and Microsoft have got their own avatars, and so we're kind of moving towards that space. But I mean, right now we're just kind of working on what we're kind of working on. So we're still a small business operating across 5 countries. But yeah, I wouldn't say never. Definitely watch this space, because it would be really cool if I could do training inside that. And you can have everybody in the same space, but not in the same space. So yeah, I can see that's how it would go.
Well, the reason why it's exciting and why I wanted to bring it up is because what I mentioned about those companies that last 7 days is a very real thing. It's called a decentralized autonomous organization, and one of them, for instance, they had an organization that they were just trying to buy a copy of the U.S. Constitution. They didn't even know why they wanted it. They just wanted to see if they can get it, and they were able to raise $42 million in the span of about a week. And the elasticity of being able to convert from like, okay, I'm part of this operation for 3 months, this operation for a year, this operation for a week, being able to learn the information is actually going to require, and I've made this argument on other episodes, I've got the receipts for it, it's got to be fun. It's got to be interactive. So there's definitely a lot to flourish in that space, but it's not it's not today's matter. But it is coming.
Yeah, I definitely think so because yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's for another conversation, but
Sure.
it sounds exciting.
So I'll shift gears for us. So it is about we're closing in on the hour, but if I can maybe have another 10 minutes, that would be
Yeah, sure.
sublime. So one of the things that you mentioned earlier about feeling the fear and then going through it, and that's a big theme on the program too. We do try to talk about confidence and anxiety and overcoming doubts in the program. And I think what's I guess I don't know if I would say it's an irony, but it is an interesting observation in the human condition, and that no matter how much we might be able to absorb information, fear comes from such a guttural emotional place that the rational mind is at a disadvantage. So I'd love to hear what were maybe some of the methods or some of the specific things that you had to do when you were in that fear state and trying to work through it, trying to feel it.
I think the biggest fear appointment for me was to leave a public paid job with a young daughter. That was kind of the biggest fear for me. I think over the 6 years, and sharing with you, I have a therapist that I've been working with. That's definitely helped with my confidence. But also, I've found that my confidence has grown since finding out more about myself and the things that I like doing and my authenticity. I encourage people to, feel the fear. I run sort of, I do international speaking, and we talk about coming outside your comfort zone because actually, the best things happen outside your comfort zone. And once even if you take, for prime example, I got everybody to stand up. Oh, I know I didn't before that. I said, right, everyone, we're all sitting down, and I said, I'm going to take you out of your comfort zone. And I just stopped talking. And you could see this kind of fear coming on kind of everybody's faces. And it was just kind of this, you could feel the tension in the room. And then I sort of broke the silence and said, oh, how's everyone feeling? And they said, oh, they're in the wrong seminar room, and kind of like jovial jokes about it. And then I just made them stand up and step to the right. There was nothing about it, and it was just a small demonstration that if you actively push yourself outside your comfort zone, you think, oh, that's not too bad. I can do this, and your steps can get bigger and bigger kind of each time. So your confidence then builds each time you push yourself out your comfort zone. The fear becomes less because it's repetition, isn't it? If you're doing the same thing over and over again, it's muscle memory of the things you're doing. I did read an excellent book by Susan Jeffries, which is Susan Jeff, I think it's Jeffries. It's Feel the Fear and Kind of Do It Anyway. And that's kind of where I balance up actually what's the worst thing that could happen. If I didn't set the business up, I'm, and now an international business owner, which is an amazing achievement in 6 years, that I wouldn't have been here if I didn't kind of step outside my comfort zone or sort of jump, really. But I think as my business grows, I'm more and more outside my comfort zone. I feel the fear quite regularly. I go out to sort of authors, people that have startup businesses. Mike McCallowitz is excellent. I followed a lot of his business principles, sort of looked at the coaching aspects, and now the public speaking stuff that I'm helping people do. And to feel the fear, you need that kind of, a little bit of support around you from coaches, as we say, or from additional learning points, and that can help build your confidence. But it is all about you as a person, and if you're willing to kind of push yourself out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to share a little bit about that too, just from my experience. So, having done B2B interviewing for about 3 years, I mean, I had done lots of content hosting prior to that, but entering into a call or into a room with business owners, with CEOs, with 7-figure, 8-figure entrepreneurs, it's a lot of pressure. And the worst thing that could have happened actually did happen, like 3 or 4 interviews in, where I was going on too much of a tangent, and then he asked, you realize who I am, right? Like, this is, why are we having this conversation? And I actually have that audio recording saved in my hard drive somewhere. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's one of those things where, like, when I'm 60 years old, just for nostalgia's sake, I just want to go back and listen to myself panic the most I've ever panicked on a workplace. And it actually still continues to inform my behavior to this day. It's just a matter of, like, okay, if I'm going off on a tangent, I'm just going to point that out and then say, okay, but after I ask this, we'll go into the next thing. So at least that way, the guest always knows, okay, this is as far as we're going to get with it. And then I know what to expect next. So it was an amazing learning opportunity. It really taught me, and it became one of the core skill sets to conducting interviews, which is, like, if you're going to go off on a tangent, just let people know how long it's going to last, and then make sure you're aware of, like, what the next questions are going to be. So, and then another one too, I just want to get away from, like, the sort of the metatextual nature of this conversation, but, like, I remember how fearful I was being a renter and trying to make enough money to live here in Toronto. And I don't know if you know, but Toronto's kind of expensive. And then one day I just started doing it, right? And then a few years go by, and I'm like, oh wow, I actually pulled it off. And being able to have that confidence from, like, that was what I was afraid of, is, like, am I good enough to sustain myself? And so feeling those fears, just jumping into it, it's the fact that it is so discomforting up front is everything you need to know about where is the value coming from. This is valuable because of the effect that it's having on me right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, learning from your mistakes, I'd never run a business before, and now I'm running an international business. And you do something, you learn from it, you make sure it doesn't happen again. And that goes back to sort of having a growth mindset. And that really sort of empowers you and thinks, oh, right, okay, well, we could do it differently this time. I have to say, this is probably the hardest job I've ever had, if I'm totally honest.
I can imagine.
The start of 6 years, it's been huge challenging. We've had COVID, now we're kind of going through a recession. So and I never kind of, I always want to stay humble in what I do. I'm totally grateful for everybody that kind of I work with, or who makes the business what it is, because I've got the strategy and the vision, but actually there's no I in team. Like, we're all a family, and I work with my sister, I work with my wife, I work with my aunt, my cousin. So we are a generally kind of family business. But the associates and the trainers that work for us, we are, I would call them across the world. We have people in Toronto as well. So it's they're all kind of part of the family, and I'd stay humble, but I am very kind of proud of myself that I've done it. And if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be here. So it's kind of learning from your mistakes. And, we say pushing yourself out your comfort zone. You can only be that small step sideways, and then the more steps sideways you do, the better you'll feel, the more comfort, the more confidence you'll have. So yeah, that's definitely.
Well, happy to hear it. So I'm getting really, really close to closing this out. One thing that this is this is definitely part of the closeout act of this. So what I was curious about in the growth of your company and your platform is two things. One is, like, do you have a 5-year overture of where you see things going? And then the second part is, what do you feel like are maybe some of the specific challenges in terms of either getting your message out or ranking on search engines or being on social media? What do you feel like you want to address in those areas?
In the next 5 years, I'd like to be kind of more established within the countries that we're in. So we just hit North America at the start of this year. So that's definitely the next sort of 3 years. 3 years for us. Messaging. As a small business, we'd only started looking at our marketing from September last year. So it's about getting our messages out for search engines as well. Social media, we do push out on social media, very kind of pictorial, blog related. The one things that I would really like to do is more of podcasts, because this was an amazing opportunity to be invited today. And I was terrified, by the way, because it's my first podcast.
I get nervous for every single episode. I've over like 300 episodes, and I get nervous every time. And one person told me that the day you stop being nervous is the day you have to stop doing this job. And I thought, yeah, she was right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, and just some more kind of short videos, really, that I'd kind of like to do in sort of like marketing. But, I assume that comes with my courage about being on camera. And I'm working through that now as well. So just to be a bit more sort of being more on camera.
Well, I didn't realize this was your first podcast appearance. So it's an honor and a privilege to be a part of that. Not that it's competition or anything, but this was also the funniest episode that I've done so far on the program. So I didn't.
Hopefully, as in sort of like, funny. We've had nice fun together. So cool.
But there was one comedy premise that was floating through my head, because like there's on TikTok there's a lot of like business coaches and people who will make recommendations like top 5 things to watch out for. And it says, if a corporation says we're like a family here, maybe don't go for that company. But what I thought was funny is like, okay, well, you're actually a family. Like it's your relatives, it's your siblings. So no, we're quite literally a family business. So just the idea of like, but people warn me about, no, we're actually a family. Like we get Christmas dinners and we share gifts and everything. We're actually a family. So just the idea of this, like how perception and how the corporation is just like co-opted the idea of family, when in actuality family is like the most important thing in the world.
And I think like for me definitely Laura's my business owner, my wife, she was in public service too. She left and we kind of did the business together, and then my aunt joined, and then she's kind of really driven, and then one of my best friends has joined. And now my cousin is the marketing manager and my sister is sales as well. So it's a really, family businesses do come with some of, it's a challenge to manage a family. But also as a family, we're all kind of driving this business together. So it does have as a nice sort of homely ring to it, if that should make sense. But, keeps us all humble.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I believe that is everything that I've got for you today. Actually, that's not true at all. That was a total lie. I have like 10 other things I was going to ask, but the nature of the conversation is that we let these things unfold organically. But I did want to give you the floor once more. If there was any other thoughts or reactions or anything that's been floating in your mind you wanted to get out of your system, feel free. And then one way or another, do share with the audience where people might be able to find you online.
Oh, yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn or tap me up. leadershipthroughdata.com, www. I think of the things that I work with is people. I know the lasting message that I wanted to say is that if you've kind of got something to say in a business context that you want somebody to listen, just do you. Don't try and copy somebody else. Get an objective view, and then think about how you kind of want to deliver that. Multiple times I've seen people, sit through a boring kind of hour-long presentation. Everybody's asleep, everyone's on their phone, and then when they get to do the presentation, they're doing the same thing. So they're just copying somebody else, and you're stealing time from them. And time is the most important for people. So, if you want to present something differently. Just try. If it doesn't work, tweak it again. That's exactly kind of what I've done, and what I encourage other people to do as well.
Fantastic. Well, I have to say this is, I mean, not that we've had a bad episode. It's all been good, but this has been a fantastic episode. And like I said, it's been a real slice to be able to be the first podcast that you've been on, because some people that I talk to, they do like hundreds of these, right? And so it's like, I try to make it distinct for them as much as I can. So it's cool for me. This is just the start of my day too. So it's nice to have this energy for the rest of my day. But
you're absolutely welcome.
With that, we are going to wrap this bad boy up. So this is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. If anybody has any feedback, they want to get in touch with me, it is Joseph at impactfulcoachingpodcast.com. It is spelled exactly as you think. And Jacqueline, thank you again for being on the program. And with that, the Impactful Coaching Podcast is here because we want to inspire you to do whatever it is that you want to do. And through us, our goal is to make sure you're impactful while you're at it.